Hi, welcome to the Control Hub. Information about the layout of the screen. So we got different layouts that we can work with on the screen once it's put in there, and you can actually change those during the boat show. In this case, we got the Azimuth 50 powerboat here, and we got some buttons in the right-hand corner that are already designated from our side. So if we want to change the layout so that we put the buttons in the below and get a bigger picture, we can do that. So if you have like I'll turn on the lights, you got this picture and you want to have some bigger picture because it suits the screen better. It could be in half screen mode or in full screen mode. So you go to options underneath here, and then you choose the home page layout from landscape into portrait and say save and back to home. Now we put the buttons in the below and the ratios change so that we get a bigger picture of the actual vessel. Turn on the lights and you get some other information here. You go to options underneath here, and then you choose the home page layout from landscape into portrait and say save and back to home. Now we put the buttons in the below and the ratios change so that we get a bigger picture of the actual vessel. When you want to change the actual picture of the vessel and all the information that is linked into that, you go to settings and configuration library. Under here, we've actually applied a few different boats. It could be a tug or a trawler or a sport fishing boat, but in this case I'll just change the picture for a sailing vessel just so you can see it. And go back to home after you've done that, and now you got the sailing vessel graphic in here, and you got all the buttons that are related to the sailing vessel. Those are already pre-arranged from our side in the JSON file that is uploadable into this system. I want to change the text of one of the lights here and say edit, and go and say boom light green, for instance. I could do that and then go back, and now I've got boom light green here, which then comes out on the actual button down here saying boom light green. So it's very easy to work with. Go back into boom light green and change it to white again. And what you see down here is actually the area of what do we need it to do when we push that button. We have no changes when we had anchor, steaming, or inshore sailing. But what we want to do, we want it to turn off the red light when I turn on the white light, because otherwise we'll get a pink light. So this is what this setting does. And then underneath here, this is the actual channel. So we turn on the channel, which is now boom light white, but we also have the dimming channel turned on, which is dimming channels are designated on channel 1 and 14. But they can also be a normal input-output channel, so that we'll go through that a little bit later. But these two needs to be turned on at the same time, otherwise you cannot dim the actual light here. So we'll save this setting, and we can go back to the boom light white here, and then I can take the slider and put it where I want it. It's 10 steps. Now we got boom light failure. It doesn't detect that there is the boom light white. That could be because I set it up wrong, or because the light is faulty, and it comes up with this alarm here, and it will sound the alarm also if you put a monitoring on it. So we'll just acknowledge that one and turn off the light. So go back and say, okay, I want to go to configuration library. I want to go back to the powerboat I did. Apply the powerboat and go back to home. And I get back. This is the setting I did initially, but I still want to put the buttons in the bottom because it looks better for me. So you go to options You go to landscape and say portrait and save, and back again. Now it's back. So if I want to keep that setting for future reference, I would go back here into configuration library and say save current configuration. And then we'll say power mode custom setting for Michael. I'll save that, and now it's here. So this is a configuration I've made, which is now in the library. The other one that I work from as a base is this one. That one you cannot delete. Those are fixed from our side, but you can actually introduce your own, which also means that you can also introduce another mimic screen for your own vessel if you want to. This section contains information about how to choose channels and the settings of them. So we will run through that. You go on the home screen, you go to settings, and then you are now on channels. So I want to change the channel. I want to set up another light or anything like that. Let's go to a channel that has nothing on it. So we got channel 10, there's no information. We go in here, we call it test for the fun of it. This channel mode, we got 3 different sections in here. You got Lopolight settings, you got standard, and you got basic. So the Lopolight is the one that looks for the startup link of the Lopolight products or navigation lights. If you want to go with some of the other informations here, you could go to basic. That would be interior light, where it doesn't look for any power source at the moment. This one, it looks for a minimum power consumption. So we got 3 settings. I'll go into those a little bit later. So in this case, let's go and say this is the basic product. The position of the light here is where it's placed on the actual screen. So this could be something else. I could then go, so we got the position from the left and the top, and now I want to go and say I want to have the different mark. I want to go with the symbolic mark. And how do I want it to be orientated? That could be in northeast, west, south directions. This is up for you to do. I'll put this one in north. I want to do this in 300% size. The marker should be somewhat, we'll make it something we can see orange maybe. And then in here we can actually implement it could be, let's see, wind wipers that we want to do something with. Okay. Then I say save. Now I've got this icon up here that I can turn on and go back to home to see how does it look. Oh, it's quite a big icon, right? So I could then go back in here and say, okay, 300, maybe that was too big. So let's go to 150. Go back down and save it and try and look at it again. Ah, that's a better size. Oh, but I don't like the position of it. I go back again. And maybe I should go and say 100 from the left and 800 from the top. So it will go into my left hand corner. Let's go and see where it's positioned now. So we got it over here. That could be something. We do have ability to turn on a different one that we made here, which is the bilge. The bilge sensor says we got water in the screen or water in the boat. So that will come up here. That will flicker. Once the water is being drained out by the pump, the sensor then goes back to normal and says, okay, there's no more water, and it will just turn off. On the settings, you also have the voltage that we are running. So if we turn on a light, let's see, we turn on one, 24 volt. It comes up with the consumption, the draw, in milliamps. So it's 50, 60 milliamps it runs. And then again, the position of the left hand and from the top. And again, this channel setting whether it's standard or Lopolight mode or basic. One thing you have to be aware of is that on channel 1 and channel 14, we got a special thing. We got a special thing on there. We got an extra setting, which is the PWM dimming. And those are only on channel 1 and 4. So if we introduce that one, it's on there. So it doesn't matter about the icons and everything. When we choose PWM dimming, it will then set up a slider on the screen. But what is interesting is when we then go and say, okay, I want to go into groups, and I have like the red daylight here. In the settings, I can name it whatever I want, but I can also go down here and say, when I turn it on, what happens? I don't want anything to happen when I'm underway or at anchor, but the other lights, the other dig lights, one white or just white, I don't want them to be turned on at the same time, because then the light will be pink. So I'll switch those off if I turn on the red light. And when we go down into the setting down here, then you have channel 14, which is dimming, is always switched off with the light. So it turns on the red light, but also the dimming has to be turned on. Otherwise, you cannot control it. If you go back up here, you got the column position. Where do the button? Where's that position at? At this case, it's the third button. And then, do we need to introduce a hardware switch to turn them on, so that we can turn them on outside, away from the MFD? Then we can introduce a hardware input and put on a button there for doing that. And we can use pulse, and we can use also solid toggle switches. Going into pairs, we can pair two channels. We can pair a primary and a secondary channel. So if a primary light fails, it will kick off the alarm, and then it will turn on the secondary channel accordingly to that project. Choosing channel mode. We're going in back in settings. We're going to set up a light. Let's go back to test here. We got a light. I want to go into channel mode because after naming it, this is the next point to go to. So we got LPL, standard, and basic. I did briefly touch on it, so I'll give you the differences between them. The Lopolight LPL setting is the setting where we look for the startup link, and then we can work from there. So that will be with the Lopolight navigation lights introduced on this channel. If we choose a standard channel, we will have a minimum current consumption of a minimum of 20 milliamps. Otherwise, it will come out with an alarm. So that will be monitoring something that uses more than 20 milliamps. We can change that setting, but this is the standard that we're going out with for beginners. If we go to basic mode, there's no monitoring, so it doesn't look for any consumption, and will just work. So that will be for PWM lights, like the interior lights or deck lights, where we don't want to monitor the actual consumption. Or it could be for a relay, working relay that we want to start up, because we cannot monitor the consumption on the relay-driven products that are being attached to the relay. If we go out of this area and go into channel 1 or 14, which is designated for the PWM dimming, we will then have the PWM setting in here. We can use the channel for the different versions as well. So if we don't have any dimmable lights on them, we can just use that channel for whatever we need, which is normal. But if we choose a dimming, the PWM, it doesn't matter really what we put in here, because the slider would then come up on the screen as it's used to. So if we go back here, you see the slider up here. I'll explain a little bit the icons and the settings about the icons. So we go into settings. We go into, for instance, channel 10. We'll say, okay, I want to change something in channel 10. We'll call it, it could be sensor, some sort of sensor. And we'll leave it in standard mode. We explain, we expect to be seeing a minimum consumption, or we could put it into basic where we don't see any consumption. So we'll just put it into basic because that will lit up on the screen without coming up with an alarm. So where do I want to position it? I want to position it somewhere up in the left-hand corner. So I'll give it a position 100 in from left and position 100 down from the top. I want to go with a symbolic marker. I don't mind the E setting, that's okay. I want to go with a big logo, so let's see, 200%. And I want to go with a color that is different from the other ones, so we'll go with the yellow one. And we'll take a different marker here. What do we want to go with? We could go with a Q, big Q, large Q. Okay, we'll just save it. In order to see where I placed it, I could turn it on here manually, go back up to home screen, and I see, okay, this is where it's set, but it's written wrongly because I chose east. So we go back and say, okay, I want to make something here. I don't want to go 100 in, I only want to go 60 in from the beginning or 60 from the top. I want to go a north setting so I can read what it says, and there we go. Settings, go back, check it out. Yeah, got it here. Okay, so if I go and say I want to turn it on or off, I can't do that. Yes, I can. It was just setting it. So turn on and turn off. You get these information. This could be something like you want to turn on the gas magnetic system so that the gas runs through. So now you know the gas is turned on and you can actually work it. So once you're done making food, you want to cut off the gas so that you don't have any possibility of leaking gas from the magnetic center onto the stove. And then you can turn it off again and it will cut off that gas connection. So let's go back into the queue here. It's quite easy to work with. So if I change the marker again to south or west or east, I will just tweak the actual direction of the marker.